Good evening and welcome to the Argyle Town Council Candidate Forum sponsored by the Cross Timbers Gazette. I'm Max Miller, publisher of the Cross Timbers Gazette. I'll be the moderator of this evening's forum. Bob Weir was unable to make it tonight, but he sends his regards. And Emily Miller will help me a little bit with our timekeeping, or also known as Emily the Warrior Cat. As a local newspaper serving Southern Denton County for 41 years, the Cross Timbers Gazette is proud to provide this opportunity to the community to meet their town council candidates and hear their views on the issues facing the town. The Cross Timbers Gazette is Denton County's largest locally owned newspaper, mailed to 50,000 homes and businesses each month, including every mailbox in Argyle. You can read the latest Southern Denton County news online anytime at www.crosstimbersgazette.com and of course on our Facebook and Twitter pages. Early voting begins Tuesday, October 13th and ends on Friday, October 30th at any of 46 Denton County locations. On Election Day, November 3rd, the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Visit www.votedenton.com or call 940-349-3200 for information on your specific polling place. Before we meet the Argyle Town Council candidates, I'd like to introduce the Argyle ISD candidates and let them speak for 3 minutes each. In Argyle ISD, there are contested races in place 1 and place 2. In place 1, we have Phyllis Clark and incumbent Craig Hawksworth. In place 2, we have the incumbent John Bitter and Chad Gibson. In place 3, which is unopposed, Sam Slayton is running unopposed. And you'll have 3 minutes each. If you can do me a favor, when you're not speaking, please mute your microphones. In fact, that's probably a way for me to do that, but you guys go ahead if you don't mind. And we will start with a 3-minute with Phyllis Clark.
Hello, and thank you, Cross Timbers Gazette, for this opportunity. I appreciate it. My name is Phyllis Clark, and I am running for Argyle ISD School Board Place 1. My background is that I am in my 27th year of being in education and my 2nd year of virtual education. While other candidates or members of the board have spent some time in a classroom, they've all used it as a platform to something else. My years were in the classroom with students. Students, both present and future, are the focus of every school board decision. And these decisions mostly affect the students in the classroom. No one knows the classroom better than the teacher. I spent 13 years in an Argyle ISD classroom, so I know firsthand how these board decisions have worked in the classroom and in the district. I ask for your support on Election Day. Please vote Phyllis Clark, Argyle ISD School Board, Place 1. Thank you. Please vote.
Thank you, Phyllis. Next, we will have Craig Hawksworth, 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Max, and thank you, Cross Timbers Gazette, for hosting this. So my wife and I moved to Argyle in June of 2007. Our 2 daughters started kindergarten in Argyle and are now both one in Argyle Middle School and one in Argyle High School. In our 13 years in the community, we've always been willing to raise our hands to get involved, and that led me to run for and ultimately be elected to the AISD Board of Trustees in May of 2014. I'm excited and honored to have the opportunity to be elected to my 3rd term as an AISD trustee. The biggest challenges we've had in the last 6 years continue to be challenges for us as we move forward. Those are growth and student safety. The district has grown significantly during my tenure on the board and will continue to do so. The community has blessed and entrusted the district with 2 bonds during that time, allowing us to improve existing campuses and build new ones. We developed the Bond Oversight Committee, which is comprised of community members with expertise in commercial construction, so that we could be most efficient with our construction projects, which also translates to being responsible with the tax dollars entrusted to us. We also recently hired a construction manager who has made an immediate impact on our projects and will continue to do so for years to come. Growth will continue to come, and we will continue to determine the best way for the district to move forward, all while maintaining the high expectations and sense of community that makes Argyle ISD great. Safety and security of AISD students and staff is paramount. The district has consistently been a leader in the area of safety and security and continues to set the bar high. We started with our own AISD Police Department in 2013 and now have 3 officers under Chief Kearney's leadership. Most recently, Dr. Hagan was brought on as the district crisis coordinator. Dr. Hagan works directly with campus administration and staff to address the needs of our students on a daily basis. This is more important than ever as we continue to adjust to our new normal and what effects it is having on our students' mental health. Bottom line, the current board, including Dr. Bitter and myself, have played a significant role in coordination with Dr. Wright and all AISD administrators, teachers, staff, and the community in guiding this district through the last 6 years with success. It is that experience from the previous 6 years that will serve us well in the years to come. I am asking for your vote to allow us to continue the work that has proven successful in Argyle ISD. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Next up, John Bitter in place 2. John.
Good evening, Max, and thanks for hosting this this evening. Like Craig, I spent the last 6 years serving the Argyle School District as a board of trustee. It's been a great honor, and I originally decided to run for the board because I'm a benefactor of a strong education, and I understand the value of a strong education. It begins at the very early elementary ages of school. I wanted to make sure that the Argyle schools, when I joined the board, was already noted to be an exceptional school district. But I wanted to continue to do my part to ensure that the Argyle ISD made strides in every part of what it's tasked to do in educating kids. So both extracurricular and certainly in our curricular endeavors. In the last 6 years, we have seen a lot of change in the district. Certainly everyone has noticed and focuses on the growth. The growth is in place and is perhaps even accelerating. As Mr. Hawksworth said, it's extraordinarily important that the district stays on top of the growth. It's also important that everybody, certainly people who are going to serve on the board, understands what board members can do in terms of growth. Certainly there's been a lot of talk about, the board should get involved with developers and stopping growth. And that's just not something that the board can do. It's not in the mandate of the board. A school board is mandated to manage or oversee rather the district. Its job is to hire and oversee the work of the superintendent, and his job is to adopt a budget. And so we have worked hard in the last 6 years to stay true to the requirements of a board, and we have worked closely with Dr. Wright to manage the growth, to continue to hire the best teachers we absolutely can hire, to stay true to our values of limited class size, and to make sure that we expand the curricular options that our students have options to participate in. Because as we grow, we'll have a more diverse student population that will require that we have access to activities for all kinds of students, whether they have goals to move on to college or whether they have goals to move into the workplace directly after high school. And that we are able to meet the needs of our college-bound kids, the same as our kids who want to enter the workforce and kids who have special learning needs. It's our obligation to be prepared to teach all students that enter the district. And as we move forward with the challenges of growth and we move forward with the concerns of security, we will continue to be leaders both in our district and.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Max.
Next, we have Chad Gibson.
Hey, Max, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Chad Gibson, and I'm running for the Argyle ISD School Board Place 2 against Dr. John Bitter. And first of all, thanks to Max and the Cross Timbers Gazette for hosting us this evening. We appreciate you. So in terms of experience, I was a high school band director at a 6A high school for 7 years. And so I know what it's like to be on the front lines in the classroom with students. I also have my master's degree in education and my principal certification. So I got to see campus level management behind the scenes. And I'm now a financial advisor, and my wife and I also own a small real estate business. And there's not one person currently on the school board that has this combination of education, administration, and finance and business experience. And additionally, as we have 3 young kids, ages 8, 5, there's not one person on the school board that will have kids in the district for at least 15 more years like we will. And so when I thought about what to talk about tonight, there's so many things that are important. Security, hiring the best teachers, high expectations for students, the district's financial situation, preserving religious freedom and freedom of speech for students and staff. I did want to briefly touch on one issue that threatens who we are as a district, and this is a difference between Dr. Bitter and myself, but I oppose the first ranch development. The short version of this is that this development would bring 8,000 residences to Argyle ISD, including 4,000 apartments. I published a post on my campaign Facebook page, and I lay out how Argyle High School could have a very difficult decision in the future, that we have 5,000 students at the high school, or that we divide the Eagles. This could happen possibly as early as the early 2030s. The idea that we can digest this gross asinine is, and I haven't spoken with one Argyle ISD resident that is in favor of this. And I do lay out actually a solution. It's called de-annexation. And I encourage you to read about it on my Facebook page. On a different note, quickly, this past Monday, Dr. Bitter and I filmed what was supposed to be an informational video for Argyle ISD voters. And I encourage you to check it out. Instead of sharing his own views, Dr. Bitter consistently engaged in a patronizing series of personal attacks on my credibility, my acumen, and my understanding of the school board's role in governance. And he had no actual response to my points and showed zero concern about what First Ranch would mean for the future of our school district. I will be releasing posts and feedback on this on my Facebook page if you search Chad Gibson for Argyle ISD School Board. Finally, Argyle ISD is an incredible place to be, and I am so honored to be a part of this great town and school district. I pray we never sacrifice who we are and what our vision is for the future. And after having countless conversations with Eagle parents, I know this. Thank you so much. Thank you again to Max, and God bless you, and go Eagles.
Yeah, thank you, school board candidates. We appreciate your time tonight. You're welcome to hang around and watch the rest of the show here. Now we would like to welcome and introduce our Argyle Town Council candidates. In place 1, we have Tom Irwin and incumbent Bryan Livingston. In place 3, we have incumbent Sherri Myers and Richard Spees. In place 5, we have Rick Bradford and CB Standridge. So we are only missing CB Standridge tonight. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. After the opening statement, I will ask candidates questions. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. And finally, we'll have 2 minutes for a closing statement. And of course, reminder again, you guys have been great about the microphones. Please mute them when we're not speaking. You know, everybody these days is a Zoom expert, obviously. We've been on it so much. We will begin our 1 minute opening statement, and we'll reverse the order on the closing statements, but we'll begin our 1 minute opening statement with Tom Irwin.
Thanks, Max. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay, perfect. So good evening, everybody. My name's Tom Irwin, and I'm running for Argyle Town Council, place 1. I've lived in Argyle for the last 6.5 years with my wife, Lydia, and our 4 kids. We came to Argyle because we wanted to live a more rural lifestyle. We were living in Lantana prior to moving to Argyle, and for our children to get an outstanding education through the Argyle Independent School District. We've become deeply involved in the community through various activities provided by the school district and from the surrounding community, and we love it here. It's home. I've spent the last 6 years volunteering my time in various areas of the community. I am currently the president of the Argyle Youth Sports Association. I've been on that board for the last 4 years. and in various roles, including treasurer and vice president of basketball. I've also done some work behind the scenes with the Argyle Education Foundation and the Argyle Cheer Booster Club. In my work life, I've served as a consultant to global organizations, CEOs and CFOs, trying to help them navigate the challenges that come with running a large business, managing growth, and staying relevant in the marketplace. One of the things I've learned from that experience is the importance of developing relationships and gathering and analyzing information and strategic thinking. I look forward to tonight's discussion.
Thank you very much. Next is Bryan Livingston, your opening statement, 60 seconds, please.
I'd like to begin by thanking the Cross Timbers Gazette for hosting the forum tonight. I'm sure that everyone participating joins me in wishing a swift recovery. It's an honor to participate tonight as a candidate for town council and to help Argyle citizens make informed decisions when they go to the polls. It's also been an honor to serve the town as an appointed member of the council since October of last year. I believe that I've been effective on the council because of my unique background. I'm no stranger to public service. As a naval officer and a volunteer in positions ranging from church councils to school boards to leading a neighborhood association. In my professional life, I've acquired experience in formal education in construction and engineering, human resources management, finance, strategic planning, and negotiating complex transactions. Tonight, I hope to win your support on Election Day so I can continue to serve the citizens of Argyle going forward.
Thank you, Bryan. Next up is Sherri Myers. Sherri?
Okay, I'll try to keep the light from shining through my golden locks here so you guys can hear what I have to say. My name is Sherri Myers. I am currently serving as your town council, place 3. I'm also an economic development director and a member of the strategic planning committee. I have had the privilege of living here for 13 years and I watched my graduate from Argyle ISD. Like so many of you, my family was drawn here to the rural charm and community and the amazing Argyle ISD schools. But several years ago, I did notice that the leadership of the time had a different priority than so many of us did when they put 5 large subdivisions on the ground at extreme, strong citizen opposition. So I decided to step forward and serve. Since I have been appointed to the council, these are just a few of the things that we have done in a very short period of time. We have balanced our budget and have almost $500,000 surplus in a good year. We have just dropped your ad valorem taxes for the 2021 cycle, and we will be saving all homeowners on their taxes. We've hired a new police chief. We have hired a new town administrator with almost 40 years of experience, and we now have 2 chief police officers on duty at all times, keeping our citizens safe. This current council has shown momentum since 2017 and they have a plan for the community. I'm so pleased and honored to be working with such a group of dedicated citizens.
Thank you, Sherri.
Mm-hmm.
Next up is Richard Spees.
Good evening. Thank you, Max, and thank you to the Cross Timbers Gazette for hosting this rather different forum tonight than normal. I am running for place 3. And like many others, came here to the town of Argyle for the great schools and living environment in 2008. I have a 15-year-old son in the Argyle High School here. I've been a volunteer for the AYSA Sports Association, Troop 192 of the Boy Scouts for my son. And I just finished 4 years of being on the Planning and Zoning Commission. One of the things that I've seen over this time is, again, there has been a shift, and I think it is time to have another shift in how the leadership of this town works. And I'm here to fulfill this role. My background and experience, I'm a project and program manager and also a licensed engineer here in the state and one other state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Okay, we have Rick Bradford as our final opening statement. Rick, you have 60 seconds.
Thanks, Max. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and thank you to the Cross Timbers Gazette. My name is Rick Bradford. I'm running for Town Council, place 5. My wife, Sharon, our daughter, Morgan, who attends Argyle High School, and I have lived in Argyle for over 10 years now.
And like many of you, we fell in love with the schools, the town's beautiful mature trees, open spaces, and the small town charm. And we feel very blessed to be a part of this community. I started attending town meetings regularly back in 2010, really just to stay in touch with new developments and plans for the future. We had come from the mid-cities area and experienced firsthand the results of poor planning and overdevelopment. And I wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to happen. We love our home in Argyle. I noticed that after I started attending these meetings, that it didn't seem like citizens really got to have a voice. There were a lot of decisions that were made in spite of what the citizens were saying. And it really motivated me to get more involved and start learning as much as I could about the workings of local government. So after participating in meetings as a citizen, I took the next step in 2017, applied and was appointed to Planning and Zoning, where I've been for the last 3 years and continue to serve today as chairman of P&Z. And with your vote, I look forward to representing the citizens' interests on Town Council Place 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. We will now begin a question and answer format. Each candidate will have the opportunity to answer each question and will be limited to 1 minute to answer the question. Questions will be asked in rotating order. The other day, I asked candidates to submit questions that they would like me to ask tonight. I'll be asking those questions along with questions submitted by the Cross Timbers Gazette readers. So we're going to go ahead and start this Q&A with Tom Irwin. And Tom, the first question is, what is the biggest issue facing Argyle and how would you address it?
I get the first one and I get the loaded one, right? So there's a litany of challenges coming towards Argyle. I think that in particular, I think everyone would say growth, obviously, and managing the growth and being smart about it. But I think in particular for me, I worry the most about the infrastructure that and the challenges that come with how we manage that with the growth that's coming. Growth is coming, there's no question about that. The infrastructure to support that growth is something that I think is going to be a huge challenge for us. We've got issues with roads. We've got, how are we going to be able to support all these new developments that are going to be coming in? And I think we really need to take a hard look at how we are spending our money, how we are pulling in our income for the town to be able to take care of the infrastructure and to build on it, to be able to be much more sustainable as we move forward. And I think, obviously that's a subcomponent of growth, but that is, in my mind, one of the biggest issues we have with all the development that's going on around us. And I stopped on time this time.
Thank you. Bryan Livingston, same question.
Thanks for the question, Max. Well, I come at this in a slightly different way. We actually have done a pretty phenomenal job during a COVID year of keeping the town solvent and making some key decisions, especially with regard to our new line item zero-based budget process that allow the council to participate in a team, an agile team with the town staff so that we can address challenges and be forehanded about how we allocate resources. But our biggest challenge right now is the fact that we have a form-based code that doesn't work. And it's key to the future development of the town that we restore form-based code to the promise that was sold back in 2013, 2014. And that's one of the key projects I'll be devoting my time to if I'm honored by your vote and I'm allowed to serve on council as an elected member in the next term.
Thank you, Bryan. Sherri Myers, same question.
Okay, thank you. Great question. I would assume that all of us are going to answer that growth is probably one of the biggest issues because we're growing in the community and around the community. I think the solution is something that both myself and Council Livingston have already initiated, and that's taking a more regional approach development to the commercial development on our 407-35 corridor to help offset the cost of services that are coming with all the big subdivisions that have been put on the ground. We've already sat down with the Denton County Commissioner, with North Lake, with Hillwood, and we've been discussing master planning that big commercial corner that we really need as a town. And we recognize that the face of retail has changed, and so we want what best serves Argyle and its citizens.
Thank you. Next, Richard Spees, same question.
Thank you, Max. Again, as everyone else has said, growth is the key issue that's Argyle is facing right now. There's no denying that. There are landowners out there that have vacant land right now that will be developing them at some point in time. And I think the key thing is what we haven't been doing as a town so far is reaching out to those landowners and partnering with them early on before they come in with a plan, and talk to them about what it is that we could work with them on to develop as part of that growth. Because again, that property, it's going to be developed at some point in time. We can either fight it or we can work with them on it. And part of the problem that we've had is we've had a very significant turnover in town staff. And there's a reason why people leave. And we need to adjust why it is that town staff keeps leaving. And that's one of the key things that I would want to work on, is working with town staff to address that issue so that we can have that continuity in the town staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question for Rick Bradford.
Thanks, Max. As everyone has said, Argyle's growing really quickly. Combined with our school district, which has a geography about twice the size of the town, it's really driving traffic, demand for local amenities, stressing the infrastructure. And I think we really need to look beyond the town limits. This piece of Argyle is a relatively small part of the region. And by partnering with neighboring communities, I think we can really develop a regional strategy that brings good, solid commercial development along the I-35 corridor. The goal too is to get some more walkable, family-oriented businesses, destinations in town. And lastly, I think for all this to happen, we really have to have more open communication and coordination between the town and the school district. So I applaud Chad Gibson and a lot of the work that he's talking about out there.
Thank you very much. Our second question tonight is: rising property values in North Texas will inevitably stress the finances of retired citizens. What will you do to help seniors to remain in Argyle? And we'll start this time with Bryan Livingston. You have 60 seconds.
Thanks, Max. So we do have an issue with rising property values, and we have an issue with a significant population of retirees who live in Argyle. A couple of years ago, we undertook to explore a property tax freeze for our over 65 citizens. And for a number of reasons, largely involving some failures on the part of town staff at that time to provide adequate information for good decision making, we punted. And we decided that what we would do is we would settle for half a loaf, and we would put an exemption of $100,000 on property ad valorem assessments to try to cut a break for the over 65 population. But that's not good enough. And as unprecedented growth continues to happen here, property values rise, we need to take another run at a property tax freeze for the over 65 citizens of Argyle. And I'm committed to making an effort to get that going in my first months in office.
Thank you, Bryan. Same question, Sherri Myers.
Thank you. Great question. And I think Councilman Livingston actually answered it very well. We've just recently did a tax freeze for the 65 and older group of citizens that deserve that. We don't want our senior citizens who've lived here for 30 and 40 and 50 years to be leaving the town because property values keep going up. So 100,000 right now. I concur with Councilman Livingston that if there's more to be had, we want to do that for them. They have gifted us with this community, and we want to make sure that they stay.
Thank you, Sherri Myers. Same question, Richard Spees.
Thank you, Max. Yeah, clearly the issue of the property values is a huge issue. And I think that the property freeze is really the only answer that's out there right now. The issue is how we go about implementing that property tax freeze. And we've got to work with town staff, and we need to get some very realistic expectations and some forecasting of what we can expect to see on that, so that those hard decisions can be made. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about affecting people's livelihoods, and we're talking about affecting the revenue into the town from tax. Property values are going to continue to go up. That's just a reality. I don't think I've had my property value not go up but one time since I've been here. So definitely working with the council and staff to figure out what that property tax freeze needs to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Our next is Rick Bradford. Same question.
Max, I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question again?
Question is, rising property values in North Texas will inevitably stress the finances of retired citizens. What will you do to help senior citizens to remain in Argyle?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. As has already been mentioned, the tax freeze was a good start. We have citizens here that know the history of Argyle. They really represent the culture and the spirit that is Argyle. So we want to do everything that we can to support them. I think the taxes are one issue. Frankly, the property taxes, they pale in comparison to the school district taxes. That's where the growth of the school district, we need somebody strong that's going to help manage that, because that is a much bigger impact. And I think from a town perspective, our ability to collect revenues from businesses, the MDD is a great move forward to start collecting some of those taxes in the ETJ and attract some good, solid businesses that provide amenities for our older population, so they want to stay around. So thank you.
Thank you. And Tom Irwin, same question.
Yes, sir. So I think that the first thing that I would do, I'd like to understand the size of the burden. So I would like to have a lot of dialogue with those folks that are feeling it, the 65 and over crowd, and understand what that true tax burden is to them, and what does that really mean to them as they get stressed about staying in Argyle. I mean, I think it's interesting going last, because I think everyone's made some very valid points. I think the tax freeze is something that needs to be discussed. I think that you need to put together a task force to figure out what that looks like. I'm not a tax expert, but I'm more than willing to dive in and do some analytics and try to come up with some projections of what it's going to look like over the next several years. I think Rick made a good point about the school district taxes. But at the end of the day, I think understanding how it really impacts our senior citizens and what they need to have in place for them to be able to stay here is the first step, so we can figure out how we make a good plan moving forward to solve it.
Thank you. Sorry about that. My next question is, we're going to start with Sherri Myers this time. And this question is, since the last town council election, there's been a significant amount of turmoil within the council and turnover in several different town positions. What do you believe is the best path forward to resolve these challenges? What can you do to make things different?
That's a really good question, Max. I think the issues have been resolved. Like anything, we're a business. And when you have staff that doesn't do their job, or is it not a good fit, they move on to greener pastures, and we find another person that's a better fit that will work with us as a town council. Our current town council gets along great. We're not here to have a boys club or be buddy-buddy. We're here to do the job of the town. So we come in and we do the work of the community, and that's really what we're here to do. So I feel like we've moved past some of the turnover and some of the turmoil, and we are a lean, mean fighting machine, and we've got a lot of accomplishments under our belt for doing it that way.
Thank you. Same question for Richard Spees.
Thank you. I have to disagree with Sherri a little bit on some of this here. Yes, there has been a lot of turnover for sure. And I understand people say, okay, well, now we're past that. I don't think we're really past that yet. I think there is some problem that has caused that turnover to occur. And I don't think that has all been addressed yet. So I think that would be one of the things that, again, as I mentioned earlier, that I would really want to work with is to find out exactly why we've had some of the turnover that we've had. Some of the people that have left town have been there for a very long time. And you typically, if you're there at a business or whatever position you have for a long time, you're usually pretty good at what you're doing. And the other thing is most people, when they leave a position, it's because of who their leadership is. It's not their work environment. So I think there's still some work that needs to be done to address the turnover issue.
Thank you. Next is Rick Bradford.
Yeah, thanks, Max. I think, it's always a work in progress, and I think we've made some good strides forward. There have been personnel changes, and I think a lot of that goes with a demand for higher accountability and digging into the numbers and looking at responsibility to the citizens. And frankly, I think many of those moves have been good. Some have been challenging. But at the same time, I think we have made many steps forward, and I'm very excited about the history of the town and preserving the culture here, but getting beyond this divisionism and actually getting on with the job. And I feel like our council has done a lot here in the last few months and is on a really good trajectory, and there are some really good staff in place today. So I see things getting better and better.
Thank you. Next is Tom Irwin.
Thanks, Max. So I think it's interesting that everyone is kind of veered towards the turnover in town staff. I think that it's unfortunate the way that the behavior that we've seen from the council, and that doesn't necessarily include the people that are on this meeting right now. In the past, we had a council member verbally accost another council member at a meeting. I was there that night. We had the council member sue the town. We had the rest of the council agree to pay that council member for suing the town because the way that he was suspended was not appropriate according to an ordinance. There's just been a lot of discourse within the council themselves, and I think it's been unfortunate. And that was one of the reasons why I decided to run, was because of the turmoil and just the infighting. We had a council member basically get pushed out. Councilman Donahue, who I thought was great, and was basically pushed out on a technicality. And it's been unfortunate. And I think that there needs to be some change to get leadership a different point of view.
Thank you. And final for this question is Bryan Livingston. Bryan, you have 60 seconds.
Thanks, Max. Well, look, a lot of things have already been said by the previous candidates, but I guess it's really important to keep in mind that this town has gone through a very tough evolution from a town that was basically controlled by a very tight group of people, and a town that's now accountable to the citizens. That change in a citizen-focused government began in 2017 when Don Mosier and Todd Mankin and Ron Schmidt were elected. And what they discovered was a whole lot of inertia, a whole lot of staff that were working in silos, that were not working as teams. And I won't say that was by design, but I mean, we really had a town that was not set up for success. We had council meetings once a month. We had people that it turned out were not fulfilling their responsibilities appropriately. And the action of this council, certainly in the last year since I've been on board, have, I think, all been extremely positive in terms of reforming the way the council and the town staff work together and bringing in people that we did nationwide searches for to upgrade the quality of the leadership on the staff.
Thank you, Bryan. Our next question is, what would you do to help Argyle get a grocery store? And we will start out with Richard Spees. Where's our grocery store, Richard?
Thank you. So that's a really interesting question. As many people probably know, Waterbrook was supposed to have a grocery store right at 407 and 377. And I was actually in attendance of the P&Z and the town council meetings when that Waterbrook project was discussed. And I went up and I spoke and I said, as much as I don't really like the project, too many people, it does meet the comp plan. I said, but my biggest concern with it was that the last phase of that project was the commercial development, and that I was afraid we were never going to see that commercial development come through. Well, guess what? That empty church building has been standing there for months, years now. I think we need to start holding these developers accountable, and we need to work with them on the other areas where we do have some commercial space available. And again, this goes back to working with the landowners now to try to develop some programs for in the future.
Thank you. Same question for Rick Bradford.
Yeah, thanks, Max. It's interesting you bring that up, because that's actually what drove me into really getting involved with the town many years ago, when there was a grocery store proposed right on top of our crown jewel, Hilltop Elementary. And there was a lot of controversy around that. And what I learned in the process was that, you know, there are a lot of people that don't feel the need for a grocery store right in the middle of town. We have a beautiful Kroger over in Lantana. We have stores in Roanoke. I hear from more people that it's about, you know, hey, when can we get a restaurant? When can we get some walkable space? It's not so much about the grocery store, which, by the way, if you've ever looked at your grocery bill, about 98% of what you buy is not taxable. So it's really not the best use of land. I don't see that contributing tremendously to the financial benefit of the town. You know, I think we're in pretty good shape. Maybe we will get a small grocery store in one of these big developments, and I would like to see them follow through when they promise these things, as Richard alluded to.
Thank you, Rick. Tom Irwin, same question.
Thanks, Max. I think that part of the challenge has been that we as a town, Argyle, have a reputation to be very difficult to work with the developers. I think that figuring out what type of grocery store we need to have, does it need to be a big box, a Kroger, or something like that? I don't know, probably not for the size of our town. I would think it would be more of a small town grocery store, but I agree with Richard that we need to start holding these developers accountable. And it's really hard to do that when you don't develop a good relationship with them and work with them on what's going to be developed, what's going to be there, have the back and forth, and have those types of conversations. We just haven't done that. Our council hasn't done that very well. And I think that it basically costs us the opportunity to put the right things in place that our citizens want to have. And I also think we need to make sure that we're listening to all the voices, right? I think that there's a lot of citizens in Argyle that would like to have a grocery store. And I think that listening to the collective as opposed to smaller groups is important.
Thank you very much. Bryan Livingston, same question.
Sure. Well, look, let me just be pretty direct about answering this question, Max. One of the prior councils, the council that was in control when the very controversial Waterbrook development was passed, and two public-private partnership districts plus a TERS public-private partnership district were put in place. Why that was done by this town, a town of this size, which is an attractive target for development, still makes no sense to me. But as part of that developers agreement, the gentleman developing Waterbrook was actually offered an incentive of over $1 million to bring us a grocery store. Think about that. So it's 4 years later, and we still don't have a grocery store. So I don't think it's appropriate for us to say that the town didn't do everything it could, bending over backward, in fact, to try to induce the developer to deliver on that commercial development promise. What's really much more important going forward is that we sit down with the developers and we brainstorm, charrette, noodle, bring in support to develop master plans using the form-based code that I want to renovate, so that we can create realistic expectations on both sides and be completely transparent to the citizens.
Thank you. Sherri Myers, same question.
Okay. Thank you. Well, all the good answers have been taken. I agree a little bit with everybody. I've lived here for 13 years, and my biggest complaint when I first moved here was, oh my gosh, there's no grocery store. I've got to drive to Flower Mound to find one. But the reality is grocers, big grocers are sitting on their land. They're not building big grocery stores any longer. And the reality is with all the growth that's gone on around us, you can go 6 miles south to Roanoke, you can go 6 miles east to Lantana, and you can go 6 miles north to Denton. It's been a very divisive topic in our community. And at the end of the day, I look at it strictly from a commercial standpoint. And if there are zero tax dollars coming in to support the town, then is it in our best interest as a town council and as a community to want to put something on the ground that takes up very little commercial retail space that we have left? Is that something that we want? And is it in the best interest of our community?
Thank you. Our next question is about COVID-19. COVID-19 has dramatically changed how government works at all levels. Considering the local government has the most direct impact on citizens, how would you make sure that local government continues to provide the same level of service to the community? This question, we will start with Rick Bradford.
Oh, sure. Give me the COVID question. Yeah, I think the town's actually fared very well. Both the town and the school district have put plans in place to keep the continuity going, yet keep our citizens and our staff safe. I think, this week alone, we had town council and P&Z meetings virtually. We've gotten pretty good at it. So I think that's an important factor, that there was good planning. I think the staff and town council, we've all come together, P&Z, figured out what makes sense. And it's been nice to see too, donations from BPS Jet for hand sanitizer, the police department handing it out. It really has been a community effort, and I would just really applaud the fact that if we look at surrounding areas, and I'm actually in healthcare IT, so I see the numbers. Argyle has fared very well, and I applaud all the effort, everyone that involved and continues to be involved.
Thank you. Same question for Tom Irwin.
Thanks, Max. This one's near and dear to home because just earlier today, as the president of AYSA, I was dealing with COVID questions and topics based on something that's going on at one of the schools in Argyle. So very important topic. I think that the key to it is to follow the guidance of what's being provided to us by our governor, understand the guidance that's being provided at all the different school districts. How does that impact what we would do as a town? We have to make sure that the services that the town needs to provide, that we're still able to provide them. And what's the best way to do that in a situation where COVID and the pandemic is there, and you can't just walk into the town hall and go talk to somebody right now without, you have to have a mask on. What's the protocols for all that? There's a lot to think through, and I think we have to be very strategic about it and very smart about it. And because at the end of the day, while we have to take precautions and we have to keep everybody safe and do all of those things, we also have to continue to live our lives. And I think that's very important. And the town being able to support all the citizens doing that is just as important.
Thank you.
FYI, Max, I couldn't see the timer, just so you know.
Yeah.
The background block.
I think that I've had locked up. So, and of course here it's a little tough.
There it is. No worries. Just want to help my fellow, the people going next.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Bryan Livingston.
Yeah, well, just so everybody understands this, Argyle as a town is really pretty much driven as far as public emergency decrees by the county commissioners, and the commissioners court released a decree that originally put us in lockdown and has slowly been modified. So we have to follow their cue, and they have, I think, made for the most part some pretty good decisions. I noticed that Judge Eads is calling for Denton County public accommodations, specifically bars, to be opened actually earlier than Dallas County is. So the coordination between the town of Argyle and the Commissioners Court and the flexibility and frankly, the very intelligent way that Argyle ISD has dealt with getting kids back to school. I think all of those are a credit to our community. I think we've done a pretty good job. There's always a way to find fault, but we've got it together here a lot more than other communities, even in North Texas.
Thank you, Brian. Sherri Myers, same question.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to touch a little bit more on maybe the more human component that we have. We are an extremely, extremely fortunate community in that we have almost 60% of our population lives on some form of land. So it is a little bit more convenient for many of us to shelter in place, especially when all this happened. I feel like the biggest component that is the difference between how our town council and our staff dealt with things was by simply communication. So Councilman Livingston really touched on the fact that we follow the county, but the communication between our staff and our council and the leaders in the town and the school district has been nothing short of amazing. So I just want to thank the people that have been in these positions making these decisions, because they aren't easy, and we have to take into account everybody in our community.
Thank you. And finally, Richard Spees.
Thank you. I think this is obviously a very big topic right now. One of the things that comes to mind in particular on this is this disease affects people of different ages in a different way. Clearly, those that are older or are immune suppressed, it's a much bigger issue with them than it is, say, kids. And we've seen that with the schools in particular. So my thought on this topic is we need to take a long-term approach on it, and we need to take into consideration that this is probably going to be around for quite some time yet. I know there's talk about vaccines and all that, but we don't know that until it's here. But we need to, as a town, look forward and find out, are we going to have to continue to project meetings through Zoom for those that are older and can't participate in person? Do we need to provide additional communication venues at the town hall, perhaps with additional rooms or cubicles where people can meet and that sort of thing? But I think we need to take a long-term look at the problem.
Thank you. Let's talk traffic. Our next question is, what do you feel is the top transportation priority in Argyle, and how would you fund it or address it if it's not a local road? And we will start with Tom Irwin.
Thanks, Max. Well, I'm glad to see that the traffic light at Canyon Falls is finally working. So let's start with that comment. So I think that actually for me, it's that with the growth that's coming and the development that's coming, I think that 377 and the importance of making it a more sustainable road, wider, giving it more space, and just cleaning it up is important. I mean, I also live, I live in the neighborhood right behind the high school. And the bus routes for all the back roads for all these buses where they're going to pick up kids and take them to school every day, they're in really bad shape. And there's been plans to improve those roads and to make those improvements, and they haven't been executed on. I think that obviously the tax revenue is important to help fund all of that. I think that there's I think there's other ways for us to try to raise funds to improve those roads. But I think that my biggest concern is what's going to happen in that 377, 407 corridor up that road.
Thank you. Same question for Bryan Livingston.
Yeah, thanks, Max. Well, I have to agree with my opponent that 377 is one of the biggest issues, but it's also a TxDOT responsibility, not a town responsibility. And unfortunately, I have to report tonight that we may not see the TxDOT trucks and the TxDOT contractors working 377 on the improvements until 2024. That's really unfortunate, especially since as a town, we've been pushed by TxDOT to make certain infrastructure changes, like the relocation of sewer lines in the vicinity of Waterbrook, which are going to cost us quite a bit of money. But the good news is that we have found a way, because we were pushed by TxDOT to make those changes, to both reduce the original quoted price of the change of the location of the sewer lines and also to be able to avoid, by going to a gravity system, avoid replacing the Frenchtown Road lift station at a huge expense. And that's a lift station which is now at its end of life. So we've saved several $100,000 just through smart management under the pressure of TxDOT to prepare for 377.
Thank you. Same question for Sherri Myers.
Can I ask you to state the question again, please?
Sure. The question is, what do you feel is the top transportation priority in Argyle, and how would you fund it or address it?
Okay. Well, I think right now the immediate one is the Crawford Road project. It's something that we are starting on shortly. I am really pleased that the town council got involved immediately and started negotiating on some of the infrastructure costs and brought the project down from an $8 million road project to approximately $3 million. And through the use of interlocal agreements, we were able to help pay for some of that project, so not all the bond money comes out of the taxpayers' pockets.
Thank you. Richard Spees, same question.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously transportation, huge issue. Traffic is, as some people have referred to it, Interstate Highway 407 out there. 407, 377, as Bryan said, TxDOT roads. We really can't do a whole lot about those two roads. What we can do though is look at the feeder roads onto 407, and not, when I say feeder roads, I'm talking about smaller roads in town, and what we can do on them. I think we're going to have to make some hard decisions, and we're going to have to spend some tax dollars to do this, but we're going to have to improve some roads. Again, buses for school kids is a big issue. We may need to look at some additional traffic circles. There is a huge benefit out of that traffic circle. It's not a traffic signal that the town would have to maintain, because we currently don't have any town traffic signals that we maintain right now. So we need to maybe sit down and have some design charrettes and talk about what we would want to do. But those are some of my thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rick Bradford, same question.
Yeah, thanks, Max. As Sherri mentioned, Crawford Road, that's near and dear to my heart because it's my roadway to anywhere out of Country Lakes. So I was excited to see the collaboration that took place between different municipalities, headed up by Don Mosier and Diane Edmondson and some of the other folks involved in that. I think that's huge, and I think that sort of a regional approach makes a lot of sense. I'd like to see more of that in the future. I think the other aspect of it is we talk about these roads being in disrepair, and that's a symptom of poor development, these poor road standards. And I know that Bryan Livingston, Sherri, they've been working hard to improve those standards so that we get better roads the first time around, and we don't end up spending a lot of money patching up, what was really done poorly in the first place. So, I'm excited about, the future. It's going to be painful with 377 and Crawford for a while, but, just to see the efforts and the well thought out plans that are going behind that gives me a lot of hope for the future here in Argyle. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is, in talking with citizens during the campaign, what is the most important priority that they have shared with you for the town? What's on the citizens' minds that you're hearing most often? And we will start with Bryan Livingston.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We've already touched on the grocery store. The town is basically divided about 50-50 on the grocery store. And I expected, as I was walking neighborhoods and knocking on doors, to hear a lot about the grocery store per usual, but that's not what I heard. I mean, I've got a recurring theme that has emerged in my conversations with citizens. They want a gathering place. More than one citizen described to me just the joy of being at a Friday night ball game, a baseball game or a football game, and how that brings us together and how enjoyable it is for us to be a community. COVID's made that more complicated, but we'll get through it eventually. But having a location where we can have gatherings, places where kids can play while parents eat, for example, maybe possibly connecting some green space by living the promise of our parks and trails plan. I think that that's one way that we can address the priorities that have been made known to me.
Thank you. Same question for Sherri Myers.
I will have to agree with Councilman Livingston on that. It's really a sense of community. We are split in half by the 377, and for the longest time, the two things that we can all gather at has been school and church, and those are fabulous places to be able to gather at. But families want to sit down at restaurants and let their kids run. They want to have those opportunities where they can see their neighbors outside of school and church. I definitely think that we can take a look at what some of the small town best practices are, see what's worked for them, and see if that is something that fits with the vision for Argyle.
Thank you. Same question for Richard Spees.
Thank you. So really, there's about 3 issues that most people that I've been talking with bring up. One is the issue of the continued growth and the traffic impacts that has. We've already talked about that. And again, we're going to have to face some of that head on pretty hard. It's going to be some tough discussion coming up. The second issue is people have expressed concern and they say, what the heck is going on at town council with all these people leaving? And I hear about lawsuits and all the rest of it. So they are concerned about what's been happening. And then lastly is really just an issue of a lack of unity. In other words, we're Argyle. We're one Argyle. We're not Argyle West. We're not Argyle East. We're one Argyle. How do we all get to where we can all get along and be those neighbors? So those are the things that people have expressed to me and their concerns.
Thank you. Same question for Rick Bradford.
Max, could you repeat it for me again, please?
In talking with citizens during the campaign, what is the most important priority that they have shared with you for the town?
Right. Thank you very much. You know, obviously the grocery store it has come up, but not nearly as much as it did probably 5-8 years ago. I think a lot of people were drawn here for, you know, what is Argyle, and they're willing to drive 6 miles, 7 miles, whatever, to a grocery store. Like Councilman Livingston mentioned, I hear a lot about walkable space and restaurant. You know, there's no place to go in Argyle, or very few choices, unless you want pizza or, you know, pizza or barbecue. Thank God for 407 barbecue. But it's been a real challenge that we don't have a good place for people to gather. And that comes in many forms. It's restaurants, it's parks. It's been nice to see the council really pushing forward with the park plan. You know, I'd like to see more spaces like that where we get easements donated, and you know, it's included in more of these developments, so that we can preserve that that green space and the trees. I worked hard to help preserve the tree canopy.
Thank you, Rick.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Irwin, same question.
Yeah, most of the other candidates have covered a lot of it. The things that I wrote down is needing more community. You know, my wife grew up in a very small town, and I mean, there were, you know, around holidays, whether it was the 4th of July parade that, you know, kind of went down one of the main streets of the town and throwing candy to kids and those types of things, and developing that sense of community. I agree with Rick and with everybody else that talked about a place to gather, whether that's parks or restaurants. I will say, I mean, you know, we've got a medical facility that's going in on the corner right by the high school that could have been a restaurant, but that was denied, you know, during the process of review by the council. And so it was sold to the person that's putting up the medical facility. Infrastructure is a big one, and that's what, and that includes roads. Just concerned with all the growth of what's going to happen to the infrastructure and how we're going to manage it, and how it's, you know, what's going to be the impact on our daily lives for those of us that are here now, with everyone that's going to be coming. Those are the things that I hear the most about.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Max, can I rebut?
I'll give you 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Okay, the zoning change that allowed the medical office there on Cook Street, that zoning also allowed a restaurant, but it also allowed an urgent care center or medical office. So it wasn't that it was denied, it was approved, and then the developer actually changed what they wanted to put in there, which was an entitled right. So I don't think that can be held on over town council.
Thank you. So here's an interesting question. What kind of housing is lacking in Argyle? And we will start off with Sherri Myers.
Doggone it, I knew I was going to get that question. I think that as far as housing that is lacking, I wouldn't say that we're lacking in choices. We have several subdivisions that are on the ground that have different styles of houses. I think you choose to live where, when, and how you want to live. And if there's something that's not here in Argyle, they're going to go somewhere else to find it. So I'm not sure that we're necessarily lacking. We just have a certain style and a certain quality of property size that we choose to have here by choice.
Thank you. Same question for Richard Spees.
That's a very interesting question. And surprisingly, I'm going to agree with my opponent on this one. I don't think we're really lacking of a particular type of housing. I think the issue is people come to Argyle and they don't want to leave. They're like, hey, I like it here. So I don't think we have an abundance of every type of housing on the market available for everybody. Especially when you look at the, I'll call it the lower cost housing, something that's towards the bottom of the market. It's just not available because people don't want to leave. Or if it does become available, and I'm not the realtor here, but it sells immediately. So it's not that it's lacking, it's just maybe hard to find or hard to get.
Thank you. Same question for Rick Bradford.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think that's been one of the neat things about Argyle is that there is so much diversity here that there are lower cost homes and there are, multi-million-dollar homes on lots of acreage. So there's really kind of something for everyone if you can find inventory. And, that I know Sherri knows that well, but, I don't really feel like anything is missing here. We already have over 600 homes that are permitted that haven't been built yet. So I think there's going to be plenty of inventory coming up. But, I really don't see that there's anything lacking, except for maybe some, well-planned communities that have more green space. I would like to see more of that.
Thank you. Same question for Tom Irwin.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because I think everybody else has covered the topic. I mean, the only thing I think of that maybe would be something to consider with one of the topics that came up earlier is some sort of retirement area, that a unique type of build that would allow the residents that want to stay in Argyle, but that maybe are on a lot of land that don't want to try to manage that anymore, to find a place to go. I'm not talking about like an assisted care living place or apartments or anything like that, but just some sort of unique type of environment where they still have land, they still have access to outdoors and everything else, but it allows them to have a smaller space to manage maybe. But there's no lack of any type of home that you want to find, other than I think the large established homes, which people don't tend to move out of very often. So.
Thank you. And finally, same question for Bryan Livingston.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I'm going to use a little bit of my time to just talk about a success story, and the success story is 5T Ranch. I think for all of the developments that remain to be planted in Argyle, 5T Ranch is just a terrific example of the PACE process, which is a transparent process where the developer actually sits down with the town in a workshop setting. They ask the neighbors what they're interested in. 5T would have been twice the density that it is today. It would not have been the jewel that it is today. It's a gorgeous development, and it's very much consistent with the changes that were made to the comp plan and the community zoning standards after 2017. we need more developments like 5T. But one more shameless plug for form-based code. Once we get form-based code renovated and we have the ability to intelligently master plan in partnership, in transparent partnership with developers at our principal commercial corners, we're going to have the opportunity to offer some more variety in housing, which might include, for example, a mixed-use development that would have some passing resemblance to South Lake Town Center.
Thank you. Well, time has flown tonight. I have time for one more question, which I think is a good way to kind of conclude our Q&A, because y'all have mentioned this. People are asking for restaurants and stores, stuff like that. What would you do to help attract quality businesses to Argyle? And we'll start this round with Richard Spees.
Thank you, Max. And I'm going to kind of tie on to what I said earlier about there is land available for development out there today. And again, if it's empty land right now, it's going to get developed at some point in time. We should reach out to those landowners and find out, are they thinking about doing something? And if they are, let's work with them together. And maybe there's an adjacent landowner, and the two of them, we can pull them all together, sit down in a meeting and a workshop and talk about what some of the things they want to see accomplished with it. You know, did they have something in mind? Maybe they don't, and we can bring the ideas to them. But again, I think it's really partnering with the landowners that are out there today and looking for those opportunities.
Thank you. Same question for Rick Bradford.
Yeah, thanks, Max. I think a couple of different approaches. We have really been reactive in the past, and I think we need to reach out to top-tier developers, neighboring municipalities, and develop a regional approach that brings in some really good developers that can attract and have relationships with good businesses, amenities, that sort of thing. I think, as Bryan mentioned, the PACE process, where we bring these ideas in front of the citizens and allow for input up front, that's going to help us not only get better input, but also apply more pressure to those developers to actually do what the citizens are asking for, understanding that it's going to be an easier path for approval and acceptance, and ultimately adoption by the citizens. They'll actually use those businesses and amenities. So, I think it's a combination of things.
Thank you. Same question for Tom Irwin.
Richard hit on a lot of this. I think a lot of it is relationship building, and to be honest, reputation repair. I think that over the last few years, we've developed a reputation of a town that's very difficult to work with from a developer's perspective. I think we need to repair some of that. And then I think we need to develop those relationships with those key developers to figure out what we can do to improve our relationship, and also to figure out what we can do to bring the right things to Argyle. Some of that also includes working with the citizens of Argyle to understand exactly what it is they want. And figure out how we can make that happen, whether it's, some of the space we've been talking about, the restaurants, the walking area, all those great things. They all sound great to me, but we've got to have good relationships with the developers to effectively make that happen. And I think we've got to do some repair in that area.
Thank you. Same question for Bryan Livingston.
Look, I just have to comment that the repairing is done. We've got Hillwood's attention in terms of sitting down with us to look at win-win possibilities on the I-35W corridor. That's not happening because we enjoy a tough reputation. And our reputation, let's just make sure that we're crystal clear on this. We have a tough reputation because for almost 7 years, we had a council that ran roughshod over the desires of the people of this town. We had a very small group of people making all the decisions, assisted by by the way, high turnover town staff that turned over like a revolving door, especially in the town manager's spot. Those days are past. We have a harmonious and extremely talented team that's ready to deploy the tools that we're going to have available, hopefully after this election. Shameless plug, the MDD, or Municipal Development District initiative that's on the ballot. You say yes to the MDD by saying 4 on both of those propositions at the bottom of your ballot. The MDD will be the first group in, or the first city in Denton County that has an MDD, and that will be a tool and an innovation that will help us to attract sophisticated developers.
Thank you. Sherri Myers, same question.
Sure. Well, since everybody else answered it already for me, I do want to piggyback on the idea of being proactive to reach out in a multi-regional sit down, which Councilman Livingston and I have already initiated. But I also think it's important that we deal with developers who also have skin in the game, that they also have a high reputation and a high standard that they want to live by, and that they reflect the vision of Argyle so that we can work together. It's easy to say that we have a difficult reputation, but it's interesting to me that sometimes the very developers that spread those kind of rumors, they spread them because they couldn't get what they wanted, because we stuck to our guns and did what was in the best interest of our community.
Thank you. That concludes our Q&A, and now we'll move on to the closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their closing statement. We will start this time with Rick Bradford. Rick?
Max, thank you again for this evening and for the Cross Timbers Gazette hosting this forum. I hope the citizens find it very useful and encourage them to reach out to all of us. So thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts and vision tonight. We're at a pivotal time in Argyle's growth, and we need to get it right the first time. And I'll say that over and over again. I do believe in growth, especially from a commercial revenue perspective, but we can do it responsibly, intentionally, and based on what's best for our citizens rather than the developers. I'm confident that as the crown jewel of Denton in one of the highest demand regions of the Metroplex, we really do have the opportunity to partner with top-tier developers. Much larger cities in Texas have maintained their rural charm, and we can too. I've learned a lot over the years as a citizen and then as serving on P&Z. And some of my efforts have been to preserve the Argyle urban forest and attain tree city and scenic city status. Those were tough titles to gain, and our town staff did an amazing job of doing all the legwork. It does signify our intent to preserve the canopy, which Argyle has about a 30% coverage in tree canopy. It's one of the largest in the Metroplex and probably within this whole North Texas region. We do face a constant challenge to balance smart growth and the need for a commercial tax base. I think the MDD will help with that a lot. And experience is really critical. There are a lot of nuances to understanding zoning versus form-based zoning, what entitlements are, and when you open the door to one use, that you're also opening the door to a whole lot of others. So there's a lot to know and learn. And like I said, we have one chance to get this right. I'm confident my experience and dedication to the citizens of Argyle make me the best candidate. And thank you, and I appreciate your vote for Town Council Place 5.
Thank you, Rick Bradford. Next is Richard Spees. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Max. And again, thank you for putting this forum on, especially in this rather difficult way of doing things tonight. I've put a lot of information on our website, voteargyle.com, and you can go there and read my bio and find out a little bit more information about us. I talk about why I'm running for town council. And, there's a few other things I just want to add here and then kind of cut it short tonight. But one of the things is, this is a very difficult economic time for a lot of people. And I think that the town needs to be very conservative in the spending. And I know we've had an increase in taxes recently. And I think a lot of that actually has to do with the fact that we were under some stay-at-home orders. And so people were ordering things to be delivered at home. And that's where we got a lot of those, that tax revenue from. But a couple things to that end is, one of our council members unfortunately decided to sue the town and other council members. And in the settlement of that, the insurance company decided to go ahead and settle and pay, but then the council agreed to pay additional money on top of that, which I definitely didn't agree with. And then the other part is, we talk about on the Town of Argyle website about being a citizen-focused government. We have a citizen in the Town of Argyle that has submitted a Freedom of Information request. The town didn't want to fulfill that, or at least whoever it was about didn't want to. It went down to the Texas State Attorney General. The Attorney General said, yes, you have to do it. It didn't meet the criteria for not fulfilling it. And so the town turned around and sued the state of Texas to prevent that from going forward. And that citizen is still waiting on the response for that. So that's what I don't want to see anymore. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running for council tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard Spees. Sherri Myers, you have 2 minutes for your closing.
Okay. Thank you, Max and the Cross Timbers Gazette for hosting us. And thank you to all the citizens and all the different folks that have submitted questions. I really appreciate my opponent's thoughts on what he'd like to do if he's elected, but I would like to point out what I have actually done while serving the town in a very short period of time. And I'd like to reiterate for the community who's going to be watching this, what I and the present council have done. We have balanced the budget and have almost a $500,000 surplus, which is 10% of our budget in a COVID year. Do you want me to say that one again? We have just dropped your ad valorem tax rate for the first time in 10 years. Next budget cycle, we're going to save all of our citizens on their taxes. We have hired a new chief police. We have hired an incredibly experienced town administrator. We have refinanced our bond debt and saved over $250,000. We have started our Crawford Road project, and we are looking into better road construction for future projects. I personally have spearheaded a feasibility study on our town parsonage to look into the possibilities of a community center, talking about gathering spaces, and the MDD will play a part in that. We've cleaned up our ordinances to comply with state law in response to your lawsuit comment, Mr. Spees. We've also secured all quiet railroad crossings within the town limits when the 377 improvements are finished. And I have personally, nor has our council, approved any more high density residential developments because that's what our citizens have asked for. I and my council will continue to work to listen to our citizens and move Argyle forward while still trying to preserve our rural identity. Thank you so much for listening, and I humbly ask for you to vote for me this November 3rd.
Thank you, Sherri Myers. Next, Bryan Livingston, 2 minutes.
Thanks again, Max, for hosting tonight. My family moved to Argyle in 2012 from Fort Worth. We moved for the schools. In every respect, Argyle ISD exceeded our expectations. One of the greatest joys of being a dad has been watching my kids grow and thrive in the Argyle school system and being by their side as a parent volunteer. As a dad of 3 girls and 1 exchange student, I worked side by side with other parents to build, load and unload marching band props and equipment, hosted tennis team dinners and worked concessions. Volunteering is big here, and it reinforces a sense of community that knits us together and makes a ball game or stage performance or a church service a truly uplifting experience for citizens. It is the same sense of community enjoyed across Texas in small rural towns. Preserving our community spirit and the rural setting of this town should always be one of our most important priorities. Barbara and I had a plan when we moved to Argyle. We thought that we'd choose a retirement destination and leave town after the girls graduated. We're still here. We're here because we learned that this place and the small town values and sense of community that it embodies is something very precious and worth working hard to defend. I want to make sure that we welcome new residents the way my family was welcomed and that they, like us, want to stay. I also want to make sure that longtime residents, the folks that gifted us this precious community, can enjoy a comfortable retirement here and feel that they still live in a small town with small town values. I'm running because I believe in this place and its people. I also believe that preserving a town with rural charm and small town values is possible, even in the face of unprecedented growth in our region. Our shared future will require careful planning, creative solutions, a talented team at Town Hall, and the support of everyone watching this forum tonight. I ask that you put me to work on your behalf. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for your vote on November 3rd.
Thank you, Bryan Livingston. Our last closing statement from Tom Irwin. Tom, you have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Max, and thanks to you and the Cross Timbers Gazette for hosting tonight. I'm probably going to make a really big mistake right here. I don't have anything prepared to read as my closing statement. I'm just going to talk. I found that it's been a great night tonight. I appreciate all of the fellow candidates that are running and their willingness to offer up their volunteering to fill these roles. The reason I decided to run, and I mentioned this earlier, is because of the turmoil that was going on with the council. And let's be really clear about what happened, right? We had a Councilman Schmidt who verbally accosted one of the other council members at a meeting. He was disciplined. He didn't agree with the discipline and thought it was against an ordinance, sued the town. The town agreed to pay him. Councilman Livingston and Councilman Myers were appointed by the same group of people, Mayor Mosier and Councilman Schmidt, to fill their roles, and then voted and agreed to pay him when he sued the town. All of that just seemed fishy to me. We talk about, Bryan made this comment, said a very small group of people making all the decisions is the way that it used to be. It's still that way. And that's how I feel about it. That's my feelings about what this current council is doing. That's the reason I decided to run. Bryan has a lot of experience, and he gave some really good answers tonight, and I applaud him for that. And, Bryan and Sherri have both done some good things while I've been in this office. But I will tell you, I think there's been a leadership problem in the town council, and that's why I decided to run. And so my ask of you is, if you're happy with the leadership that you've seen over the past 2 years while this council's been in place, knowing that the people that have been appointed are with that group, then you should vote for Bryan and you should vote for Sherri. If you're not happy with that, if you feel like there's been too much turmoil, if you feel like things have not gone the way that they should, if you think that we have not created a great reputation for ourselves with the council, then I would ask for your vote. And thanks to everybody for tuning in and listening.
Max, I'm sorry, I have to rebut my opponent's statement.
I'll give you 30 seconds because
Max, this is the second time you've given someone an opportunity to rebut me, and I could have done it the entire time. So are we having a debate or are we having a forum?
Well, that is a good point. I'll tell you what, it's getting late. Let's
go ahead. I'm good with 30 seconds for Bryan. I'm good with it. He's my opponent. I'm good with it. Bryan, go ahead.
I just have to say one thing and one thing only. There is a lot to what happened with Councilmember Schmidt that is obscured by the soundbite, the ambush soundbite that you just threw out tonight. And I encourage everyone to read Mayor Moser's statement and his complete chronology of how Councilmember Schmidt was pilloried and really done dirty by people who were trying to regain control of this town. That's it.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, I thought everybody did a great job tonight. I was very impressed. Thank you guys for joining us on Zoom and for participating tonight and giving us your time. Early voting begins on Tuesday, October 13th, ends on Friday, October 30th. There is plenty of time to vote, plenty of opportunities. Please vote, and please go all the way down the ballot, because those elections, just like the candidates you're looking at here, affect your life greatly. So please make sure you go all the way down the ballot. On election day, November 3rd, polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can visit votedenton.com or call 940-349-3200 for more voting information. And you will also find a lot of that information on our website, crosstimbersgazette.com. In fact, every day we update crosstimbersgazette.com with local news. Local lives here at the Cross Timbers Gazette, because every single day we keep you updated on our website, Facebook, and Twitter. That concludes our program tonight. Thank you all for participating, and have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Max.
Thanks very much, Max. Appreciate it.
Thank you.